Okay, how I process the Birch Polypore for tea is I cut it into chunks depending on the pliability, depending on the size. Here, it was a big mushroom, so I just sliced it. It's easier to store that way for me. But usually I'll cut it into a third to a half-inch cubes, and I'll put like a quarter cup into a pan. Put a couple quarts of water in there, about maybe a quart of water in with it, and bring it to a boil with the cover, because you don't want to evaporate the liquid, or I don't. You can if you want a more condensed tea, or you can just do that and add water afterwards, or whatever. It really doesn't matter. It's all a personal preference. But I'll boil it for about 5 minutes, then I'll let it sit and cool. Some people can boil it. I've heard of people boiling it for like an hour and a half, and whatever. It's a personal preference. I let it cool, then I dump them into quart jars. And with the chunks, I just leave the chunks in there so they can still continue to leach out the nutrients as it sits, excuse me, as the jars sit in the refrigerator. And I'll take and pour off maybe a half a cup of tea, and then add like a couple cups of water to that and a little sweetener, because it can be very, very bitter. My son and daughter-in-law, they drink Birch Polypore tea, but as shots. So however, what a shot, a quarter cup. It's really, really bitter, even adding honey. They just chug it, and they're done with it. Okay, sitting before you is a chaga, which is most commonly known by most people when you talk about mushrooms and medicinal teas. And this is what chaga looks like. It looks like charcoal, bumpy charcoal. You can see that it still has some birch bark on this chunk here. And this only grows on birch trees. The inside is like I call it like a cinnamon color, a rusty cinnamon color. And this is a very, very hard mushroom. I mean, we had to take chisel, an axe, and a hammer just to get a different chunk than this. But this is my chunk. And basically all you do, and I learned this from a friend of ours, chop it up into pieces, whatever chunk you want. You can be this size if you want. It can be larger. I know of one woman that she puts her pieces, I'm assuming about this size, maybe smaller or larger, into a kettle, fills it with water, brings it to a boil, and she just keeps the chaga in there. She heats the water up again when she wants a cup of tea. And once the water is gone, she just adds more water, and she keeps doing that. She keeps it on the stove. And she said that once the water turns clear, then she thinks that's, or she assumes that most of the nutrients are gone from the chaga. Excuse me, I'm getting over not feeling well. And when the color stops leaching out from into the water, then she replaces the chaga chunks. But she does that several times. So just because you see a piece of chaga and you put it into a kettle and you boil it and you have a cup of tea, don't throw the chaga away. Keep using it until, like my friend says, and until it doesn't have any color left in the tea. So this stuff is expensive, and it's not real easy to find in nature. In fact, it's very, very difficult to find. So don't go wasting it. Don't go wasting your money. Don't go wasting all your effort outside. Don't go wasting all your effort chopping it up just for one cup of tea or 2 cups of tea. Keep using it over and over again, because there's more nutrients in there just waiting to seep out in your boiling water. Okay? I don't know what else I can say about that, except for it's delicious. It's very, very hard. You have to chop it up. Not easy to find. Often when you do, it's too far up in the tree to reach, and you're hoping that the tree will fall down at some point so you can harvest it before somebody else finds it. So, very expensive, very hard to find. Value it when you have it. Okay, just one more refresher. It's very important to say this again. that the Birch Polypore grows only on birch trees that I know of. The Chaga only grows on birch trees that I know of. Very medicinal, very medicinal. This is more medicinal and better tasting than these. This is very hard to find, very hard to get, very hard to cut up, very hard to do everything with it, except for it's very easy to drink. And these are very easy to find, but they tend to be quite bitter. So if you can't find Chaga, you might want to consider researching the Birch Polypore and see if that's something you're interested in. This, you won't need any sugar. Can if you like, or honey or whatever. This right here, well, it can be very, very bitter. But this right here, Birch Polypore, is a good substitute or alternative for the Chaga. And a lot of people don't know that. However, please do your research on how to identify Chaga, what it is, if it's good for you. Research on both of these. I don't want to feel responsible if you get a wrong mushroom or if it's harmful to you personally. So please do your research. Birch Polypore and Chaga both grow on birch trees.